what advice would you have to them about intuition in general?
We are all learning at our own capacity, at our own level of consciousness. I didn't listen to me. So back to your question, listen to your own heart. Your heart, your truth, your inner voice never leads you astray. You know when you're not doing something you shouldn't be doing. You know when you're in a bad relationship. You get those aha moments. So make it simple. Listen to your heart. And if this doesn't make sense today, it may make sense tomorrow. Your podcast, my podcast may not mean anything to someone 1 year from now. So allow that flower to bloom when it's supposed to bloom. That's it.
Welcome to the podcast that guides men to demystify and develop their intuition. I'm your host, Doug Beitz. Let's dig into the science and expand your horizons. Today we're joined by Peter Anthony, who amongst many other things is a TV producer, paranormal investigator, and an author of several books. In 1987, the after effects of a near-death experience, which we'll refer to as an NDE, presented an inexplicable gift of mathematical codes to Peter. This played a life-changing occurrence in his life. His artistic talents disappeared and were replaced with Pythagorean codes, allowing him to become an authority on ancient numerology. Hollywood VIPs heard of Peter's gift as an intuitive and began booking private sessions. In 1995, Peter's NDE abilities landed him on Fox's hit TV series, Sightings. He's traveled extensively throughout the United States, working alongside a team of paranormal and forensic experts as a psychic detective. He is currently in pre-production with a new television series in Canada. Peter, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so very much. And I also say to your listening and viewing audience, thank you for being a part of my day today. So thank you very, very much.
Okay. And I have interviewed one other person before who's had a near-death experience, and something I'm curious of straight away, because my wife has said to me, because there's one podcast channel, which is where I first heard you, and it's just interviews people who've had near-death experiences. And I've told her about it, and she thinks I'm insane. Like, why do you listen to people like that? And like, because the stories make me feel good. Like, everything's awesome. And I'm curious, after your NDE, do you have any fear of death?
I don't have fear of death. You know what I have a fear of is I'm not here long enough to do what I need to do. And that is I think my overriding theme is like, there's so much that I want to accomplish. I've kind of set a goal for myself. And this is my third documentary that I'm working on. Two are out currently. This one in particular, I'm excited about because we're going into the deepest part of the near-death experience. What happens in the tunnel? What happens with previous lifetimes? Why some of us, like myself, who was an artist, come back with other talents. And so we're exploring the many subjects that so oftentimes podcast hosts, TV shows, any kind of radio interview avoid because it's not of the norm. So I'm very excited about this particular series that I'm working on.
Cool. And when I was 9 years old, my mum was about 40 years old at that stage, and she was pregnant with which would have been her sixth child, and probably about halfway through she had a miscarriage, and the hospital it sounded a little bit like your hospital experience with your NDE. She didn't get looked after too well. She got put on a gurney in the hallway, and whatever happened, she went off and saw this really bright light, and she was never hesitant to talk about it. I never asked her about it because it seemed kind of like out there and weird to me at the time. I was only 9. But the one thing she did say is when she came back and she opened her eyes on that gurney in that hospital hallway in the corridor, she was pretty pissed off because it was so wonderful where she had just come from. She didn't want to come back. And I guess that's why I never questioned her more about it, because I was her baby son. And there was I've got four older siblings who were all a lot closer in age and quite a gap to me. I was never actually planned, but I was, the favorite golden child sort of when I did come along. And now it was like my mum saying, I wished I didn't come back. And I'm like, wow, And she never talked about seeing other beings or anything like that. I think didn't last too long for her, but that was my first experience of hearing anyone having anything like that. And it was from my mum when I was 9. So, and she was very religious her whole life. She was raised in a Catholic orphanage till she was 16. And her mum passed away when she was a little baby and that sort of thing. And they wanted her to become a nun, and then she didn't, and then she ended up going to another church. But she's still going now. She's almost 93, and yeah, she's just like, I just want to go to sleep and wake up with Jesus.
Oh,
She's pretty keen to sort of get to the other side again. She's busting to get there, and this is what I tell my wife. Like, I have so no fear of death because I listen to people like you all the time, and it's just like just sounds like a cool place to go to. Um,
well, I think even your wife and other people who are hesitant about those of us who've crossed over, you must understand that when I came back, first of all, I left with a stutter. I had a slight speech impediment. When I came back, that stopped. Um, I also came back and I wanted to share my story with people. And I learned very early on that there are many, number one, especially back during that period of time, who didn't believe in the subject. And so I learned, share information with those ears that are at least kind to listen to even a little bit. To be honest with you, I didn't come completely out of the closet with my near-earth experience until 2007. So you think about that's 20 years. It took me 7 years to process my near-earth experience. I had a high-profile career. And then I think the idea of sharing this as I went along, trying to talk to doctors, I went to priests, I went to ministers, I went to rabbis, I went to therapists. The same answer: no, 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 it didn't happen. This is a part of your imaginations, your imagination. I think I spoke to doctors, the anesthesiologists, and they all said the same thing. So what didn't change was my truth, what I saw on the other side. And as I began to process the information of dying on the operating table and knowing what I experienced on the other side, we didn't have Google back in the 90s. So I would go to the public libraries and I would read anything I could on, and we didn't even call it a near-death experience. It was referred to as if you died or you coded, which I coded. And then you read a few little blimps here and there. And so it wasn't until I went to a metaphysical bookstore in Los Angeles called the Bodhi Tree, which is no longer there, which is unfortunately extremely sad for the spiritual community. It was the largest metaphysical bookstore in the world. That's where I discovered. But what actually happened, what kind of brought me forward with my near-earth experience, I was getting a haircut. And at the shampoo bowl, a lady next to me was also, well, she was shampooing the assistant was shampooing the color out of her hair. And she turned to me while I was sitting there waiting for my hairdresser. And she asked me, she said, may I ask you something very personal? And I said, sure. And she said, did you die? And I kind of looked at her and I said, why would you say that? She said, because I died on an operating table. She had to have a facelift. And during, I guess, when they put her under, that's when she clinically coded and they had to revive her. And we opened up this conversation. And that was the point I knew what happened to me was fact. All these no's, all these doubts from the doctors, the priests, the ministers, all of that, I thought I knew something happened to me. And so that became, I guess, my mission to figure out what happened and why. And I think the other part of that for me was I saw all these codes on the other side: 222, 333, 444, 777, 999. as well as other codes, what I refer to as quantum physics codes, 8478, 7934. Numbers I couldn't understand what they were. So I began to buy numerology books and read them. And I went from basic numerology from 1 to 9. And it wasn't until, I guess, 2000 that I began to read books on what we refer to as the triple codes. And then that led me to the quads. And slowly but surely, these numbers I saw on the other side began to make sense to me. And that was the next push towards my destiny.
Yeah. So it's pretty interesting that you go to doctors and all these very qualified people, but what are they basing their information on? And you go to the hairdresser and you actually have someone who's got something to base their information on, but in the world standard, like who are they? So was it the lady washing the hair or the lady getting her hair washed?
It was a lady that was getting her hair shampooed.
Yeah.
And we were side by side. And here's what I learned. And I think so many people, even on a spiritual level, you don't have to have a near-death experience, but on a spiritual level, I believe in this thing called synchronicity. At the right time, at the right moment, you were to reach the right people. And I actually showed up late. And so I had to wait for my hairdresser to show up. So they just put me in the shampoo bowl and let me sit there and wait for the guy to cut my hair. So I go back to that moment. I thought, how interesting if I'd showed up at my designated appointment time, we never would have had the chance to have a conversation. So once again, that was something for me that began I guess, if you will, my first serendipitous moment that started my journey on allow the universe to provide the right people at the right time, with the right conversations. And I began to apply that into my spiritual world, and I still do.
Synchronicities. My favorite thing in the world is intuition. My next favorite thing is synchronicities. Yesterday afternoon, I'm driving along and I knew I had to get gas for the car, and I missed the driveway for the thing. So I went in the out driveway and went back into the gas station because I knew there wasn't another one for a long way. I go in and I pull up to the pump, and it's got a sign that and my car's diesel. And it says it's got diesel, and I pull up and I get out and I go around there, and there's 3 hoses and none of them are diesel. So I hop back in the car and I'm trying to look for another Bowers, pump that's got, and I go over to this other one. So it's sort of like the universe is really slowing me down here. And so I get in there and I find the diesel one. I come around and I'm hooked up to it, and another car pulls in on the other side and they take the hose, and I'm still sort of putting diesel in my car. And next thing, that guy who started pumping way after me, he's already walking into the thing, and I'm thinking, oh, and he's got a pretty old car, like really old. He was about 30. And I thought, poor bugger, he's probably got no money. Like he's probably just put like a gallon or 2 in, and I thought, oh God, like I've got to finish filling here real quick, and I've got to look around at his side and see, did he just put in like a couple of dollars? And I go around and I stick my head around, and just as he's coming back to the car, and sure enough, he'd put $10 in. Well, his car would take at least $120 to fill, like a minimum, like just with our, how the price of fuel and stuff here in Australia, and to put $10 in, and it was probably, he had about a 30-year-old 6-cylinder Ford, and I know what the fuel economy on those things are like, but he's not going to get anywhere on that. So I tapped on the window of the passenger thing and I said, mate, do you want to put another 20 in your car? Like another, I'll give you, put another, I'm about to like go and pay for mine. And he's like, nah. He said, I got enough to get to, and he told me the suburb he was heading to, which was, like a 15-minute drive away. This is enough to get me there. And so after like me persisting, he let me, I said,
Wow.
just jump out, throw another 20 in. Because I've got 4 adult sons that are around his age, and it's just like, I couldn't bear for them to know that they've just got enough fuel to get where they're going to, and then not sure what they're going to do once they leave there, and running out of fuel is so not fun thing to do. And like, I'm not like I'm into pay it forward and all that sort of stuff and doing random acts of kindness, but I don't do them very often. Like I think it's the best thing in the world and I wish I did it daily. But I was prompted, like it was not this, I'm not just that benevolent. Like the universe, it was a synchronistic moment. I went in, paid for it. I came out. He was still standing there. He was waiting, and he shook my hand, and he was very thankful. And he gave me like a serious man's handshake. He didn't give me a dead fish to hang on to. Like like he was a good guy, and it was just like you said. Like I was just everything was weird about me getting to that pump, and I was direct. It was the only one I could go to, and I had to be there at that time, right at that moment. And I love synchronicities. Yeah.
Well, sometimes too, I want to share this with your audience because you've read my books. You go into so many aspects, not only my near-death experience, but those chance encounters. And I have learned all throughout my life, especially after my near-death experience, that sometimes these random acts of people showing up exactly at the moment that, as I said, here you are at another gas station, and all of a sudden you go to somewhere else, and here is this random stranger that you've encountered who needs, just a bit of money. And here's what you don't know if that encounter that you've just had a conversation with is not someone from the other side. It could be an angelic being. And as I progressed in my life, digesting and understanding and reevaluating and rethinking and releasing information from the doctors and ministers and the experts, I began to have more random encounters with people or beings that to me to this day are unexplainable. And so when my heart and my intuition align, my heart says to me, it comes from this feeling of, you need to do this. And that journey from heart to head is such an amazing journey in itself, because sometimes logic is, well, I'm in a hurry, I've got to go, and this person's homeless. And you make all these excuses for your act of kindness that you would like to contribute to that situation. But one thing that doesn't go away is that inner voice. And that inner voice is telling you to do it, and you did. And so you just never know. And I also believe in the law of the breads we cast upon waters will always come back. And so I've learned a long time ago, I had a flat tire downtown Los Angeles on a Friday night in this we call it the Mix Master, where all the intersections come together. Random stranger showed up and helped me. And there's nothing worse, to be stuck in traffic, and I had a Toyota, and all the instructions were in Japanese. I didn't know what to do, but it just so happened that the person who was there was there to help. So I do believe, as I said, the bread you cast upon water will always come back, especially when you go to the heart. I'm a firm believer of that.
Yeah. And that person coming to help you, they've been put there too to do it. So
Yes.
you've got to accept the help, because the universe knows they need something down the line. They've got to put the energy out, and I very loosely use the word test. That's probably not a good word, but
I don't know that it's so much a test as much as it is. I think sometimes, I don't know about you. I'm the kind of person, I can do it myself. That's where when I go into that logical way of thinking, well, Peter, you can do this, and you just need to man up, and you need to change your tire, and this is a great learning experience. And there's this other part of me that says, you know what? Allow the joy of someone giving to you to help you out. Because I'm not the person who would ask. So there is this whole seesaw of events that are taking place with this serendipitous moment. So I think I go back to what I said earlier. If you go to your heart doesn't lead you astray. Your heart will always lead you to the right outcome.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember having a flat tire. Like this is way over 30 years ago. We were looking at, and we ended up moving the family to a tiny little Pacific island just north of the equator to the west of Hawaii. And on my first exploratory trip, I was on a nearby island, and I'd rented a four-wheel drive pickup, and I was going to do a lap of the island. This is the volcanic island, like we're up and down mountains and everything. And I'm sort of dressed for my appointment in 3 or 4 hours time with somebody. And I'm going around, and next thing, in the middle of nowhere, I get a flat tire, and I'm like, oh, and it was really dry, and there was like about 6 inches of dust on the side when I got out of the car, and I'm thinking, I'm going to get filthy changing this, like, and I'm dressed for my appointment when I get back to town. And next thing, about 8 local native kids, from sort of 8 to 14, just appeared out of the jungle. And I'm like, woo. And where the part of the island I was on, I'm thinking, these kids don't speak English, like, I'm sure. So I sort of spoke to them, and they just looked at each other and giggled. And man, they just jumped into the cabin, pulled the seat down, got the jack out, got the spare wheel off. Like, and this was like a pit stop. These kids had done this many times. Maybe they'd put nails on the road further back up. I don't know. And they just, like, it was like 3 or 4 minutes. They had jacked up this 4-wheel drive, got the wheel off, put the spare on. And I'm like, wow, these kids are really know what they're doing. And there was no words exchanged, because it was very obvious they didn't speak English.
Yeah.
And I had I was so appreciative. I had a handful of coins in my pocket. Yeah, it was probably like, and this is like over 30 years ago, it was probably $5 or $6 worth of coins.
But see, it's still with you. It's still, that memory is still with you, because it's something that happened, again, going back to my near-death experience, when I came back and I had to go through these challenges of recovery, and I had to go through the challenges of trusting my truth. As I said, that whole shampoo bowl, just when it's almost and this sounds so cliche, but once I got into the center, once I got into understanding, my mission, all these things in my life, some of them, the biggest events in my life that changed my destiny. So as I said, I think what happens here with you and so many other people who may be listening to this is that these little random acts of kindness are nothing more than, I think these little acts of kindness lead us to the big acts of change in our life. I mean, like you, I listening to my inner voice. I had something happen to me, like not this past Friday, but the Friday before. I was on my way to see a client, and it was just Friday afternoon traffic. It was heavy, and I thought, oh, I'm already late, and I'm always punctual. And the light was turning yellow. I thought, I can get through this light, and this car pulled out in front of me and basically stopped me. The light was red. The car on the other side ran through and hit him and knocked his car over to the other side, spinning his car and hitting the light. And I go back to what I said earlier. Sometimes these small acts these random acts of kindness lead us to bigger events in our life. And it goes back to learning to listen to our inner voice. And my inner voice, what you didn't listen to, said, stop, let this man go. And that logical part of my mind goes, no, but I'm in a hurry. No, I can make this light. You start battling that right brain and left brain consciousness. And that's what stops us from receiving information from the other side, from angelic encounters, or random strangers coming up to us. Again, what I learned on the other side here, Doug, it's about a choice. I was given a choice to come back to Earth, come back to this planet, to I guess, to make a difference, if you will. I didn't know at the time what difference I was going to make. But again, it goes back to your choice to help. And that choice, by helping someone else, actually that random act of kindness ricochets. My one act of kindness helps someone else. You don't know that by him getting home to his wife or his children, that he must have been needed. Maybe someone was sick. Maybe his wife fell down and hurt herself. You don't know. We never get a chance to see that in our logical world. When I cross over, every act that I saw, everything that I thought that was just my part of my life, I saw an example when I gave someone some money at a church in the book. I got a chance through my near-death experience to see and to feel and understand the whole rhythm of what he did with this money by helping other people. So again, it's almost like when you have a near-death experience, you kind of get a 3D reality of your act, someone else participating because of your participation, and they're helping someone else out. So as I said, so I have learned to show up strictly in intuition every day and trusting that the voice, whatever it is, will guide me to whatever I'm supposed to do. I always say, let's see what you have in store for me today, God. And that's how I operate.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, no, I love the conversation. It's just, yeah, it just excites me talking about stuff like this. Since I first contacted you nearly 2 months ago,
Yeah.
I've listened to quite a few podcasts you've been on. I've read one of your books, and yesterday I was listening to a podcast again, and you can see out my window I'm on acreage, and I was out in the yard, in and out, doing jobs, doing all this. So as I walked out the front door, I hit this same podcast for the third time. I'd listened to 10 minutes, listened to another 15. Now the third time, and as I hit it, I click my phone and it says it's 11:11. And I go to hit the YouTube button and I've got 333 notifications on the YouTube button to open the same podcast back up again to continue listening. Within 60 seconds of me, and now those numbers are normal to me since 2010, that they're normal. So I wasn't like overwhelmed. I was just like, oh yeah, this is life. This is normal. This is good. Got a grin. Within 60 seconds of me hitting play, walking out to the yard, you come on and you say, you're talking to someone and you said it was 11:11 and I was at 333 like Garrity Street or
Gary
something.
Street.
Yeah, exactly. And I go, holy shit. Like that was like, wow, that within 60 seconds you said and I had very specifically noticed it. And it was like, oh, okay, I do notice numbers all the time, but they had this extra depth of meaning. Like it was like, whoa, that was crazy.
Well, it's interesting that you should say that because I've done so many different podcasts throughout my many years, radio interviews, TV interviews. And since shutdown, COVID, and the whole Zoom podcast kind of started its own new journey. I died clinically at 11:11 p.m. in operating room number 11 for 1 minute and 11 seconds. So all these 11s. So 11:11, which is my birthday. I died on 11:11 in operating room number 11 at 1.11. And so these random numbers, such as 11:11, is what's happening on this planet. It's called the awakening. And what I'm finding so interesting about this, and there's not a day that doesn't go by that I don't get an email from somewhere around the world where men and women and children are asking me, I'm seeing 222, I'm seeing 333, I'm seeing 11:11, I'm seeing 777, I'm seeing this number. In fact, it's interesting because in Australia, I did a podcast. I cannot remember the name of the host. We did part 1 and part 2. I love her. Kirsty Salisbury, I believe it was. But we talked about these numbers, 11:11, and all the different codes. Interesting enough, someone from Sydney listened to my podcast, reached out to me, and he had been seeing all these numbers that I saw on the other side, as well as the quads. And so he and I struck up this conversation, and we have been, I guess, Zoom buddies since 2020. And he, like me and like you, sees all these numbers, and it'll be like today I saw 222, and I was at getting a drink, and I was the same address and all that. And I was like, these are divine moments that occur in our life that remind us that we are on the right path. And I think for you, this 11:11 Peter Anthony moment that you had, for me, it confirms. And I digress and go all the way back to when I was sharing my near-death experience with the doctors and the nurses and the ministers and the rabbis and the therapists and the psychologists. And I was talking about all these numbers I saw on the other side, and they looked at me as though I was crazy. Like, well, there's, no one knew anything about 11:11 back in 1990. No one knew about 11:11, or 22. No one. We didn't have that. But here's what happened. On September the 11th, in New York City, the World Trade Center became the new digital age of awakening. And so the following year we had 02, 02, 02, and then we went to 03, 03, 03. And all of a sudden we're now in this digital age of confirmation of what these codes are. And now thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people are seeing these codes and are reaching out to me. What does this mean? And I go back to when we first began our conversation. This new documentary that I'm working on, I'm focusing it on these numbers that people are seeing all around the world. And when I say all around the world, I'm talking Moscow, I'm talking China, I'm talking South Africa, I'm talking Australia, I'm talking Canada, St. Thomas in the Caribbean, I'm talking Scotland, Ireland. And it's not just women who are seeing this, but men and women who are seeing these numbers at these particular moments, what we call serendipitous moments. I was like you. I was listening to a podcast, and I looked on the side, and there's your podcast. Numerologist sees 1111, and so they're contacting me and want to know what this is meaning. And so what I'm seeing, the shift that where we are on a collective level, that we are shifting into a new paradigm of thought. And I think we are shifting into a new thought paradigm of kindness and compassion. I have learned to step in my truth. I don't say I was shamed by the doctors. They made me feel that what I saw, first of all, didn't happen. Second of all, that all this information I came back with were just, due to the morphine or due to the anesthesia. I mean, they gave me all these medical reasons why it happened to me, but I could not go away from the fact that what I saw and what I felt was very real. When you've had a dream at nighttime that is so real, that is so surreal, and you wake up in the morning the next day and you're having this dream and you remember bits and pieces of it and it seems so real, well, add the fact that a near-death experience, we go from start to middle to end. And every moment, we're still remembering all these moments. But imagine seeing the Titanic with Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet doing the movie, and you remember everything about that movie from start to finish. That's what a near-death experience is all about. Not a dream that shows up randomly and you can't remember all of it. A near-death experience takes you from start to finish, and you remember so much because you're hyper aware, you're hypersensitive to all this stuff around you that is new. I came back a completely changed person. I cannot sketch. I had an art scholarship. I was studying to become a special effects makeup artist. I can't sketch a stick figure. People are amazed. Some people reaching out who saw one of my podcasts in Texas who knew me when I was a well-known artist. And she said, I just can't believe this, Peter, because I saw some of your artwork. I haven't painted since the late 90s. And it just slowly disappeared. And as it disappeared, all the math equations and all the numerology codes began to be a part of my new life. And imagine taking these codes that I received on the other side. And I think what was so amazing for me, again, 7 years of studying and listening to and going to the experts and being denied and being rejected and being, rushed out the door. I got a call from a homicide detective who was working on a case that involved math. This person who was at that time considered a victim in this particular crime, they asked me to come along just as a backdrop because of the codes that they discovered in the suspect's home. When I showed up and you see these 1111s and 222s and 333s, everything kind of went into a very surreal moment for me. I thought, how strange that I get this call to meet this homicide detective to go work on a case that involves these triple codes. And this person here is starting to become a special effects makeup artist. You see the random act of information that was put before me. And that started my career as a paranormal investigator, which led me to Sightings, which led me to the History Channel, which led me all down the path as a numerologist and helping clients all around the world with my numerology, as well as different cases. Everything in our life is predestined if we pay attention to those moments. Now, let me backtrack. Predestined means we have choices when our destination is put before us. An example, like I could have said to you, no, I don't have time to do this podcast. That's my choice. I could have taken something away from predestiny. Do you see what I'm saying? Because how do I know that someone today who taps into your show is listening to the numbers that you and I are discussing, and she goes, this is happening to me. That is predestined. All these things are timed, and it's up to you and I to make those choices that serve our heart. And when our soul speaks to us, when our intuition speaks to us, that is 100% spot on. Not logic. The logic will take you away. The intuition is always spot on. That little inner voice says to you, yes, do this. And you do it. Your gasoline.
Yeah.
Sorry, I went on my tangent there.
No, perfect. Just it's what we're here to hear. And it's like those doctors have been taught the logic and that sort of side of it. And that's all they've been taught. It's all they can follow. They're programmed that way. That's, you know, not criticizing them, but that's just, I think we've got to recognize that's what's going to happen if we seek that type of help out. And I'm not saying we shouldn't seek that type of help out, but we need our eyes opened to sometimes we've got to follow a different path that's, you know, follow the road less traveled. Will seem less traveled to you, but then to that person, but then they come across someone like you and they're like, oh, this guy's been traveling this road a lot. Like, and it doesn't seem so bad. And his life seems like pretty reasonable. And he had Crohn's disease and TB and that sort of thing. And now he's walking around fine. And, you know, I heard those things were a death sentence. But now he's fine. Like, what's going on?
Well, you know, the thing too, you go back to the tuberculosis I didn't know I had. I didn't know that I had Crohn's disease because I was misdiagnosed. I didn't know when I went to the hospital that I died because of a porphyria viscus. So I was internally bleeding. And so all these things that happened to me were inexplicable. And then you add the recovery and the medications they were giving to me, which created blindness, which I couldn't walk. Still have a hard time walking today. If I have to go shoot in Santa Barbara, I'm a little worried about driving for 3 and 4 hours in a car, because what happens, I stop and I literally have to grab my leg and pull it out of the car, the driver's side, to get it to work. So, you know, all this, they could not explain to me when this was taking place in my life. So as I said, so you do like any good spiritual person does, when we have been faced with something that is tragic, when we've been given a death sentence. I was given 3 months to live if I didn't do another surgery. If I didn't take these medications, then I would speed up my death. So I thought, you know, I had to go back into that, listening to my inner voice and what I thought was best for Peter Anthony. Here I am. You know, I can ride a bike, I can see, I can't sketch anymore like I would like to. But again, one aspect of my life changed, a new aspect in my life came into the horizon. You know, and for me, growing up with a stutter, a speech impediment, to be made fun of in school by boys and girls in class, to get up and to speak before a classroom in drama, or to read a poem and be made fun of, that stigma never goes away. So for me, people who are listening today go, oh, well, that's just nothing. It meant everything to me. It still does to this day. And so it taught me how to speak my truth. I would slow down and I would say what I felt that was coming from a place of authenticity, and share my truth and my story with you. And I say something else too, and especially since you're a podcast host, I do believe that if you have an authentic show such as yours, you will attract an authentic audience. And that's how I began to navigate my new life. Stay here with what you've learned, you know, with all these things that have taken place in your life. And one day you'll get to exactly where you need to be. And here I am today doing a podcast with you in Australia.
Yep. Something I wanted to talk to you about too, when I've heard your NDE story, when you were in the hospital and, you know, you left your body, you talked there, and I'd like you to talk a bit about here, about the multi-dimensionality that you saw, where you saw other entities, beings, people from different time frames. What did you, apart from, like when you went into that hospital alive, there you would have seen people, but when you had the NDE, you saw them plus other people.
Yeah.
What was the
So
plus?
let me
Who
break
were
it
they?
down.
Where were they?
Yeah. Well, let me break it down for your audience, because this is a lot of information to cover. So I'm going to go into the logical part of the explanation and then finish with intuitive. So this way we combine the right and the left brain together as one. So there are levels of a near-death experience that take place. Many of us who cross over in that beginning stage, as I'm going into this tunnel, phase one, we'll call it phase one, if you will. Phase one is you're greeted by those people from your past. Your family members. I talk about my third grade teacher. I talk about my grandparents. I talk about a girl I went to high school with who was a girlfriend of mine. I didn't know she was dead. So that was the first part of phase one. Phase two for me, not many people are talking about this these days, but there's a lot. In this new documentary that I'm working on, we're covering this extensively. Past lives. I saw my past lives. So what happens here, when you're going into this life tunnel, this white light, that's strip away the basic thing that we need to get rid of, the physical body. You are not in physical form when you are crossing over into the tunnel. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. You are matter. There is nothing but carbon matter. You are fragments of energy. There's only consciousness. So what I'm saying is, when you think today or think tomorrow, let's say you're in or more consciously in the law of consciousness and stepping into what we refer to as the super consciousness.
Peter, I'm just going to interrupt you for
the REM cycle.
Peter, I'm just going to interrupt you for 2 seconds.
Sure.
About a minute ago, your audio started getting really bad and cutting out. And what you're saying right now, we need to hear. So maybe if you can just go back 60 seconds, and I've written the time down, and I can cut and splice. So we're talking about what, the different multidimensionality.
Okay. So do I start back, and you can edit this, do I start back with past lives, or do I go back to the past lives or the current? My friends, which one would you like to go back to? You had
just started talking about past lives, and then as you started to get into past lives, it cut out.
So what happens here when you have been greeted by, let's say, former family members, your grandparents, my sister who died, that in itself, I think, is powerful, because why? When you're traveling through this tunnel, you're not in physical form. You're in carbon matter. You're ethereal. You're in the essence of spirit. Got it? You're not in a logical state of mindset. You are in a place of allowing. You are accepting. You don't go, what's all this? And who are these people? And why is my sister? Your mind does not go there. Your mind surrenders to what you're experiencing on that side. And as these people from my past lives began to show up, I instantly recognized these people. You just knew that these people that you had been involved with you would see your past lives. One of the most profound experiences I had with my past life was I was a man by the name of Robert J. Longmire. And I could see my wife and 2 children that I loved dearly. And I'm looking at this, if you call this image of my past life, seeing me, this very tall, very prominent American citizen on the East Coast, and my wife is playing the lullaby on the piano. I don't know if it was Beethoven or Bach's Beethoven, that lullaby. Apparently back during that period of time, that was a song that everyone listened to. But I'm listening to the song and I could feel everything around the room. And then I'm quickly taken to my children, and my wife died of consumption. And so this feeling of, you don't question, you understand. And you realize as you go through each level of past lives that every life that you have leads you, it's called the spiritual thread. And what I had to learn in this particular lifetime was abandonment issues, because I lost my family at a very young age. And in the majority of my lifetimes, everyone was taken away from me. Now, people go, oh, that's a horrible thing to learn. No, it's not, because what it did for me, it forced me to come out and to get out of my shyness with that speech impediment, back then, and reaching out and finding a group of people when I lost my family to help. I didn't know it at the time when I'm going through this near-death experience, but I could see these connections of why each lifetime I had led me to, in this particular lifetime, how to overcome abandonment issues of family. So you think about what I just said. I lost everybody when I was 18. I've been an orphan since. But the beautiful part of this, taken to the highest level, is I have an extended family that is amazing. I have friends all around the world that I absolutely love and adore, and they do with me as well. It also taught me something that's very important. I've learned to say, I love you to all those people that are in my life, because I never got that moment to say to my sister, I love you, or my father, or my brother. And so those moments for me, the people who know me and know me well know that I say, I love you, because that's an exchange of energy for me that I learned. There's nothing more important. If you've had a conversation that's challenged, go to the place of, I love you no matter what. Get that moment to say, I love you. Take that moment to go have ice cream. Take that moment to be kind to the person on the street. That is your moment. That is your movie. That is your moment in life to make things work. And over, I saw these random acts of kindness. I was a slave named Clarence, I believe it was in South Carolina. I was referred to as the Touchstone. They gave me nicknames, but I was the man who basically was the more enlightened person of all this horrible time in our history. And they would come to me for advice and come to me seeking out wisdom, and especially being ripped away from their families. They always came to me. But what happened in this lifetime, one by one, a slave that I loved dearly was sold off. One was murdered, one was hung, or they disappeared. And so I'm seeing myself seeing all these people leave my life. And so I think for me, that spiritual thread, once I began to understand to cut those past moments in my previous lifetimes and cut these moments in this particular lifetime of being abandoned, snap, I set myself free. And lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, there's always going to be a spiritual thread for all of us. This may sound complicated. I'm not here to change your perspective of past lives. I'm telling you what happened to me on the other side with my past life and how it changed my life.
Interesting. So I have not heard you talk about that before on the other podcasts I've listened to with you on, but I've heard you very much talk about life reviews. So they're quite different.
Yes.
To what you were just talking about, and I'd like you in a sec to talk about life reviews, but did they happen at the same time, or was it before or after you seeing these past lives?
So we go back, so we go back to what I said, phase one. So phase one, you're greeted, past, or most current, those people in your life. Phase two, this is really important, you are going to through the tunnel, if you will, to a place called collective intelligence, where your mind is downloading the Teslas, the Einsteins, the Darwins, the Edisons of our time. And imagine reading the Bible from 0 to 60 in just a matter of moments and getting every passage in the Bible. Your mind is downloading the collective intelligence. So the first thing you learn is everything we've been taught in terms of religion. The teachings of the Christman are perfect teachings. We, mankind, have taken and edited and have deleted and put elsewhere, and became truth of the teaching of the Old Testament, and the teachings of the Christ man were edited. So you think about an edit, the truth became the lie became the truth. So you're seeing this not in a judgmental sense, but what you're seeing is, oh, this makes sense. It's just the teachings of the Christman are very simple. Be kind, love thyself as thy neighbor. We get in the complete opposite. Do not judge, let ye be judged. And all these things, as I said, for me, were just flipping through my consciousness. So phase one, past lives, current lifetime. Phase two, collective intelligence. Phase three, life review. And this is where it gets interesting. Because when you're experiencing your life review, it goes from 0 to 60 again. 0 to 60 means from the time I was born until the time I died on 11/11 in operating room 11 at 1.11 minutes, that horrible, tragic night that I died. Every moment of your life, fast, 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 fast. It's almost like if you've seen The Matrix, Neo is seeing his whole life before him in these little quads up there, every moment, everything he did. It's almost like your life is a slice of life Diet Cola commercial. Boom, 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 boom. And every moment that you see, you get, you understand. Everything is accelerated, but everything you understand as it's accelerated, you're getting. Think about light speed, boom, and getting it. So as I said, for me, you go back to the life review, you go back to the past lives, there is always a thread that you begin to understand. Mine, besides abandonment, I was afraid to speak up because of my speech impediment. When I came back, I spoke up. So you see, one thing in my life changed, and it begat me with something else that I felt really powerful to have. And now I speak my truth. I don't care who believes me or doesn't believe me. It's what I saw. This is what happened to me. I'm just sharing my story, what I happened. You may talk to someone else who didn't have a life review. You may talk to someone else who didn't have past life reviews. But this is what happened to me.
And just when you're talking there,
having this experience of the life review. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, when you're talking there about phase 2, I was picturing it like you were saying that all these things were, you started to learn all these things. You started to, everything, Tesla, Darwin, the Bible. I'm just wondering, like, I'm sort of thinking of it. Was it like the covers came off? Was that stuff already there? Was all that information already within us, but it was almost like it was covered? It was, so we couldn't access it. And now all of a sudden you're in a dimension where you could access it. It wasn't like it was given to us then, it was there, but now it was revealed.
Well, are you familiar with the Akashic records?
Yeah, no, well, more when you were talking there about the Bible, etc.
Yeah, the Akashic records, everything is recorded. Everything we do, everything we see, everything we experience, it's the collective intelligence. It's just where everything is housed. And as I said, when you are in this tunnel, again, you're not, okay, I just read the Bible, in 60 seconds and I got every bit of it. Your mind's not doing that. Everything that you've experienced that based forward to where we are today in our collective intelligence was a part of what was happening to you. That brings you every path, every footstep that you take leads you to your highest point of resurrection, your highest point of learning, your highest point of understanding, your highest part of thought. And that's what you learn. It sounds complicated. I don't mean it to be so complicated. In simplistic terms, it's nothing more than kind of a freedom to know that what you're experiencing on the other side is information and you're getting it. I think the biggest challenge for me is coming back, and people who come and see me when I'm working, they think I'm a mad scientist because I'm writing a script, I'm looking at posting on Facebook, take a pen and I'm scribbling, I'm writing a script. All these things, people look at me as though I'm like this mad scientist, but that's part of what happened to me on the other side. All these random acts of intelligence happening, digesting, understanding, next. And I've come back with that. I don't call it a gift, but it's certainly something that's how I think. Where before I was like, today I'm going to go to the gym and work out. And then I'm going to go to work. And then I'm going to go home and walk my dog. Logically, that's my day was planned out. I don't do that anymore. My whole day is, as I said, I feel like I let intuition guide me. If a voice says to me, get on your bike and go to the river, and it's raining outside, I do it. Logically, why? It's thundering, it's raining, not a good idea, but there's something there. And what happens, I show up, and there's a lady there, crying, and she's trying to recover from the loss of her husband. I listened, go back to choice. The voice said to me, go to the river. It's raining. Again, the choice. Okay, I did. I show up on my bicycle. I'm seeing a lady throw, I don't know what she was throwing off the bridge. and we engage in a conversation. That one moment I listened to, that one moment I was guided to. And so that's what I said. For me, I start my day with, okay, God, what do we have in store for me today? And that's how I lead my life. And some days nothing happens, and other days something unusual happens, like at a gas station or a podcast with Peter Anthony at 11:11. And that's when you know you're tuned in. And that's when you know there's something to this.
Absolutely. So I'm curious now, you're just talking about your intuition coming through. And from what I've gathered, it comes through for most of us differently. I'm curious how yours comes through. Like what, is it bright lights? Is it visions? Do you hear something? Is it a physical feeling? Is it something completely different?
For me, it's a knowing. For me, sometimes it's that little voice in our head, that little voice, like I said, oh, Peter, you need to stop. No, Peter, the lights, I can run this light. That's your inner voice. My inner voice, I listen to. And when my inner voice tells me to do something, I listen to it, and I go against logic, like pouring down rain to the bridge. And it makes sense when I arrive. So for me, I think the visions, if you will, the dreams at nighttime that I have, the little voice in my head, meaning my inner voice, that inner prompting that tells me, you know what, hey, turn on the TV, and there's a show on whatever it is that you're doing research on. It's as though that moment is designed specifically for you. And to me, what I learned is maybe something from the other side is guiding me to this moment. I've learned to listen to that and not question it. And that's what we tend to do. Logically, we want to question it because we can't wrap our head around it. How can you explain what happened with that podcast with Peter Anthony coming in, talking about numbers? It just was meant for you. That was your aha moment. And so, as I said, I've learned to have a lot of aha moments. And it's almost as though, using this little fairy tale, Hansel and Gretel go into the cottage and there are all these little breadcrumbs, right? And those breadcrumbs are meant for Peter Anthony. Now, every breadcrumb means something to me. And that's what I'm learning to do. I've learned to take the path that is best suited for Peter Anthony by trusting, not doubting, but trusting.
Good advice. Something I heard you talk about on another podcast that I wanted to question you about is when you were on the other side, you saw things about the future. And anything that you feel is appropriate to share with the audience some of the things you saw may have already happened because this was some time ago when you had the experience, but is there anything that we should be aware of that would be great for people to hear?
Yeah, I'm going to say this because it's a loaded question, and if I go down this rabbit hole, it's going to turn many people off. So I think the only good prophecy is the one that doesn't happen. But we are in a major shift, and we've been in a major shift since 2012, not in the sense of, the whole world's going to blow up and change and the Mayan calendar said it's all over with. We had a shift of consciousness in 2012. And as I began to look at all this from the other side, looking at these dates in particular, like Tuesday, September the 11th, 2012, 2020, all these dates were coming up in my I guess my life review, not making sense at the time. I began to pay attention to the vibrations. So the more I learned numerology, an example, 2020. 2020 in numerology means hindsight. So think about that. In 2020, the entire world was stopped, was given time to kind of review and reflect, to reanalyze, to rethink, to release, to restructure. But on the other end of that, the more advanced spiritual people were going, okay, we're in a cleansing time. We're in a higher conscious time. We're in a place of letting go. We're in a place of higher learning, higher education, higher development, higher consciousness. It's all about choice and where you are with it. And for me, going back to 2020, and I'm going to say this is very important. What lessons we didn't get down in 2020, we are now repeating now, 2024. If we don't get this down this next 6 or 8 weeks, we as a collective consciousness, we as a collective world, we will not be past here 2029. Our election here, not to get all political, basically hangs on the thread of two different types of politicians here. And it's kind of like that one wrong decision, one wrong choice leads us to a place where we don't want to go. You know, when you're in heaven, when you're on the other side, there's no such thing as the liberals, and there's no such things as the extreme. There's no such thing as gay. There's no such thing as straight, Christian versus Muslim. There's none of that. There's only the essence of spirits, and the essence of spirits is love, and where you show kindness. And so where we are right now is, where are we showing kindness right now? Are we being good people on this planet? Are our choices that we are making shifting consciousness? And here's something else too. All our leaders that we vote into power, this is my big issue. It seems to me that some of these people that we put into office are the very people that we trust, or the very people who break our trust, or the very people who make laws against the very purpose of why they're there for us. They kind of forget that. So I go back to something very important. We are all in this together. Our environment is a part of our consciousness. Our policies, our politics, our governments are part of our consciousness. We need to make some serious choices here. And I think for many of us here in the United States, we're kind of sleepwalking. We're more consumed about how much money we're going to get. We're more consumed about our education, the relationship that we don't have or should have, or a relationship that's destructive or abusive. We're in a relationship perhaps with our boss who's not treating us well. We're all kind of geared towards the wrong stuff, where we should be really helping. We should be showing love. We should be caring about our planet. We should be caring about, about the animal community. When I was on the other side, I think the biggest shocker for me is that what I saw for so many of us is we're kind of an angry planet. I had a chance to see every war on this planet, going back to 0 to 60, from the Civil War to both World War I and World War II, Vietnam, Korea, all the wars throughout the world are a warring nation. And so I'm looking at this from a perspective of, this is not what the universe and God intended. That's what man is doing to man. So we've got to shift. And what's happening here, go back to 2020, hindsight, did we get our lessons down in 2020? Did we get our lessons down in 2012? And are we getting our lessons in 2024? Because all I do is look at numerology. What I do is digit the number down to a solo number, and I look at what that number represents. And the number we're in right now is called 8. It's the 0, 0. And the ancient alphabet shows the 0 here and the 0 here touching side by side. And the 8 means as above, so below. What you put out will come back. The bread you cast upon waters will come back. If we are casting negative thoughts, it's coming back to us. If we're creating war on the planet, it's coming back to us. If we're helping people, it's coming back to us. We're in an 8 karmic year right now, politically, environmentally, pharmaceutically. That's where we are. And so I think we need to kind of look at our up and comings here. If we don't do this because of our choices collectively, then this choice that we make collectively is going to get us down to this path here, which we may not like. So we have to really sit still and think about what we are doing as a collective consciousness. And what I like about what you're doing, you're bringing information to your audience. Someone may listen to this and go, that makes sense. Someone may say, oh, I don't like that. That guy sounds like a whack job. That's his or her choice, whatever. But if you and I today in our conversation shift one person in their collective intelligence, their own intelligence, their own spirituality, then you and I have done our job. And we have shifted consciousness by that one person, because one person will talk to someone else, and that one person will talk to someone else, and so on and so on and so on. So that's how I work. I work one person at a time, one podcast at a time. And you'd be surprised how many people, when I say things that are kind of controversial, oh, I get the hate email. I get all the some of the most vile emails. But on the other end of it, the most beautiful, enlightened, spiritually amazing people on the planet who get what we're doing. And so for me, that one person that gets it, thank you. Yeah. I have learned to live in a place called gratitude. And that's how we shift consciousness. Not Absolutely. What can I get, but what can I give to be of service to the planet?
Yeah. And that's part of what my podcast's about, is because I think men are a little bit behind with developing their intuition. So, could you imagine if every man on the planet made one better decision every day. You imagine the ripple effect of that over the months. It would be like the world we live in would be phenomenally different. Just one better decision every day for every man on the planet.
Well, I think, where we are and what I've noticed just off these podcasts, again, going back to 2020, I had a book tour, all booked. I was already on my first book tour for 2 years, coming back the end of 2019. Then I was going to start my European book tour, go to Australia, Sydney, and Melbourne, and work my way up to Scotland, and then go to Canada, then come back to California. But all that got changed, right? And then went to Zoom. But it goes back to higher learning, higher perspective, higher education, higher thought, higher consciousness. If it hadn't been for Zoom, all of us on the planet could not come together and watch these podcasts and learn something about the triple codes. If all of a sudden, not because of Zoom and what you guys are doing with podcasts, if you and I talk about something here that someone's not heard before and it makes sense to them, then again, we've shifted consciousness. And that's why I think what you are doing right now is so imperative, because you're putting information out there. Take it or leave it, that's their choice. But you and I made the choice to go forward and share a conversation. And those who get it, thank you. And those who don't get it, well, flowers bloom at different times.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm totally with you on it, and hearing it all. So I wanted to briefly talk to you about your book, The Keymaster, and then you've got a new one coming out, The Accidental Prophet. Now, The Keymaster, I loved it. Like, I couldn't put it down. I just kept reading. How accurate is that to your life, and how, like, is it 50%, 80%, 95%? Like, how much have you thrown in there? I'm curious.
Well, I'll tell you what happened, and how it, it was a nonfiction book. It went all the way to New York with a lead agent. They liked the book. They went bankrupt in the middle of this Keymaster. I ended up with a boutique agency. I thought, okay, I'll find a boutique agency in Los Angeles, and they went bankrupt. And so what happened during all these different transitions of bankruptcy and the economy and publishing and all that kind of stuff that took place during that period of time when I wrote this book, this publisher said to me, you cannot name the people at CBS. You cannot name these people here as true people. So what I did, every name in Keymaster has been changed. It is based on a real person. The only person's name who stayed the same was Brussels. And the only reason Brussels' name stayed the same is because he was from Brussels, and every time he spoke to me, the only thing I can remember was that he was from Brussels. So his character in my book became a nickname. But everyone else is the Noras and the TJs and the Lindsays. They're all based on real people. All those stories that you're reading actually happened to me. If you go into the shampoo bowl incident and the powder, Nora, and I won't tell you her real name due to privacy, but that happened. And to this day, Nora's character, I got off the phone with her the other day, and we had a numerology lesson. She has been teaching me numerology lessons since I wrote the book. Actually, to go back to in the hospital when she was reading all those people while she was, being diagnosed with breast cancer. She has been my guiding post since. TJ is still a friend of mine. So yes, these people are based on this story is based on true people. These incidents in St. Thomas, Dallas, Texas, all are based on true events. It was the publisher that said, well, you can't do that. I said, I didn't know I was a first-time writer. Oh, okay. Now, what am I doing now? Accidental Prophet, my next book. Everyone there's name will be changed to protect the not so innocent, okay? But all the other people will stay the same. Same characters. Nora's coming back. TJ's coming back. Who else is coming back? The stalker that you read about in the first book is on page 1 and ends the very last page. So yeah, he's come back. So all these people are real people. Were there exaggerations? I'll say I took creative license. I went back. They took out, which to me was very particularly strong to my heart. They took out the mama and then papas in St. Thomas. When I went to the Octopus, the bookstore, and you remember when you're reading the book, you see the mamas and the papas and all that. That's where they got their start. So the last person said, we can't have the mamas and papas in here. I thought, you know what? I put them back in. It's important because you're going to find out why. Mama Cass Elliot had an encounter with Brussels in St. Thomas. And this is where this book is leading to the mamas and papas and what was going on in St. Thomas. This was if you even study in the very first couple of chapters of St. Thomas, St. Croix is the actual grid on the plan that represents the Christ consciousness.
Wow.
A vortex, if you will. So as I said, I've put all these pieces together, turned it into a story that to me is amazing. It's true. It's heartfelt. The fire, people said, that fire is not true. I lived that fire. I lived that fire. And I wanted, as a writer, when you're sharing your story, you want to take your reader to a world they know nothing about. And that's when I said, when I put my hand on that wall and singe my hands or the soot in my eyes, I wanted the reader to understand what it was like to have a fire when it's 9 degrees outside and it's icy and snowy. I'm in a bathrobe and one slipper. I wanted the reader to feel that that's true. So as I said, the homeless man in Holy Trinity Church, that's true. The box of clothes, that's true. So yes, these stories are amazing to me, and they're stories that I think for your reader, it's part of my life. So for those who have read it, thank you so much. It means the world to me, and it really does.
Yeah. And as a former professional firefighter many years ago, seems like in a previous lifetime ago, I could empathize with parts of it there where we would turn up in the middle of the night at a house or apartment fire, and the occupants had got out, and then seeing the aftermath as we would what we call like damp down things. The fire's 99% extinguished and it's just hot ember. We're wandering around, and then you see the bewilderment in the occupants' faces of what they've lost and that sort of thing, and the relatives arriving, and it's an unusual scene, and I've been through that many times of like rushing in, we're all in charge, like boom, we're doing our whole thing, and then we get it all under control, and then that next hour or two after that, as the emergency's over, we can't let people back into the scene just yet because it's still hot, and they're all arriving.
Well, that fireman in the book, who let me go in with all the tattered in the hallways, and obviously the place wasn't safe, or for me to go in. He was very kind to let me go in and look for my cat. But remember that moment. Remember that moment of that fireman, because he comes back in book 2.
Okay, looking forward to that.
Yeah. That fireman was a very special person in my life. Yeah. You'll see.
Nice. Looking forward to
I did something here that most people, and some writers will relate to this. First book, Keymaster. Second book, The Accidental Prophet. Third book, A Man from Brussels. I wrote the book, A Man from Brussels, that basically ends in St. Thomas when Ethan is getting off the airplane. And who does he encounter at the airport? But Cecilia and Morio, as he's running through the airport and bumps into them. That's where it leaves off. So it's like the Game of Thrones. Every character, every moment, there are so many different details in book 1 that you need to pay attention to. The Pied Piper. You think, oh, Nora's the Pied Piper. Actually, it's an astrological term. It's the resurrection of consciousness is what it means. Keymaster. How I got the title Keymaster? I was in London and was at Piccadilly Square or Piccadilly Circle. I don't remember which. But the book originally was to be titled Behind the Smile. And I didn't like the title. And this woman that I met in London on a Sunday, one of those random experiences, was talking about Keymaster. I didn't know what a Keymaster is. A Keymaster is a Celtic term which means to unlock your soul's purpose, your destiny. And it's referred to as a Keymaster. And when she said that to me, I thought, that's a great title. And no one liked the title Keymaster except me. And yet people love the title Keymaster as it went on to become a little bit more known in the public eye. So everything in there means something to me.
Interesting.
Keymaster is basically one's resurrection, how we go from one point of life to the other as well. You know, that whole, even that beach scene there, which is where, you know, Ethan is having, I'm Ethan, by the way, is having this encounter with this very advanced being on the beach. Book 2 opens up right there again, up those 1,000 steps in Laguna. And that's where, as I said, that first page, you're introduced to Brussels, you're introduced to Ethan, you're introduced to the stalker, who's been throughout the first book and kind of disappears, and you learn why. So, and it takes you to book 3, which takes you to the stalker's family, and during World War II, during the bombing of Berlin. And so everything is just as it's all detailed from book 1, book 2, book 3, and it's a very intricate story.
Wow!
And the book is coded with numerology codes throughout the book. So if you learn numerology, you'll learn, oh, this is what he meant by that.
Okay, interesting. And I've only studied numerology a little. I've had a you know, a reading done for myself. I sort of did it the lazy way. I paid someone to
Well, when is your birthday?
December 15, 63. So I know I'm a 1/6. I'm a leader who
So
nurtures.
Sagittarius, here's something very important. Your shift in consciousness is taking place this year. What is your higher purpose? What is your higher calling? What is your higher voice telling you to do? Where are you being led to that leads you to a higher place of consciousness? So it's all about choices for you. And Sagittarius is ruled by we kind of look at you as the golden retriever of the zodiac. Everybody likes Sagittarius because you guys, basically, it's you. There's happy-go-lucky sign. You have this kind of amazing life understanding. Despite what you may see, you always find the positive side of life. You kind of segue towards that way of thinking. You're not a doom and gloom. Freedom is very important to you. The freedom to do what you like to do, especially calling your own shots when it comes to career and money. So those things are important to the Sagittarius. And also something interesting too, you only come back once as a Sagittarius man in your incarnation. The theory of numerology teaches you come back as a Scorpio, you come back as a Pisces, you come back as a Libra, you come back as a Gemini or whatever. You only come back once as a Sagittarius male in this lifetime. It's because in previous lifetime, spirituality and religion and the understanding of the metaphysical world, you didn't believe in. So in this lifetime, it's your destiny to unravel the metaphysical meanings of the planet and the world through consciousness. Yeah. Kind of like the psychic detective of information, always seeking knowledge.
Yeah, that describes me very, very well. Yeah, very well. Wow. So I'm curious now, with all of your life experiences, et cetera, things we've talked about, how do you see the world right now? Is it awesome? Is it awful? Exciting? Horrible? Where does Peter Anthony see the world? Or how do you see it?
Thank you. Great question. Yeah. Okay. I always look at that. We go back to the 8, you know, as above, so below, two sides of the coin touching, you know, the 8 is 0, 0 on top of one another, 0, 0 here or 0, 0 that way. So I always look at it from two perspectives. Logically, where we are in a shift in time. Our politics, not just here in the United States, are critical, but you look at France, you look at Russia, you look at China, you look at Korea. We are one moment away from someone getting kind of weird, you know, with doing the wrong thing at the wrong time, with the wrong circumstances, and creating a horrible effect to mankind. On the other end of it, which is where I am with this, and I'm having a balance between the two. We are on the stages of breakthrough. Think about where we are in terms of 20 years ago, me doing a podcast on near-death, people would have tuned into. 30 years ago, people didn't even know what a near-death experience was. We went in the back room and at parties and talked about it. You know, so look at where near-death is. 30 years ago, I was denied by the medical community about my near-death experience. I've been published in the Johns Hopkins Medical Journal with my near-death experience And that was one of the first non-medical people to be published in Johns Hopkins Medical Journal. So think about that, full circle, denied by medical and being celebrated by medical. So we are in times of great achievement in consciousness. Not just near-death experiences. Look about our solar and our galaxies. There's so much information that we've not tapped into. And look at the ocean. There's information there. There's so much breakthrough for us as a collective consciousness to do. So we have a lot of work. And I think I have the best part of humanity in my heart. I think we always rise to the occasion to do the right thing. I really do. And I hope this time we really do. Because if we don't, we're here for 4 more years and bye-bye, everybody.
Okay.
So that's kind of a kick in the pants, right?
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Is that too much information, do you think?
No, that's it's what we need to hear. And we all know it inside. Yeah. All right. Since the podcast is all about helping men to develop their intuition, what specific advice would you have to the men listening? Now, some men listening might be highly developed, way beyond my intuitive abilities, and some may be very new to it. So just some, trying to bridge the wide expanse of the men listening. What advice would you have to them about intuition in general?
Take what applies and dismiss what doesn't. We are all learning at our own capacity, at our own level of consciousness. When I first had my near-death experience, it took me 7 years to process. And I think I would have learned or processed much sooner if I had listened to all the experts. I thought, well, the experts, the priests, the rabbi, the doctors, the psychiatrists, the men and women of the cloth, I listened to all of them. No. I didn't listen to me. So back to your question, listen to your own heart. Your heart, your truth, your inner voice never leads you astray. When you're not doing something you shouldn't be doing. When you're in a bad relationship. You get those aha moments. So make it simple. Listen to your heart. And if this doesn't make sense today, it may make sense tomorrow. Your podcast, my podcast may not mean anything to someone 1 year from now. So allow that flower to bloom when it's supposed to bloom. That's it. And you know what? I live in a place of gratitude. That's how I think, for me, how I navigate. Every morning I get up, I start with gratitude. And here's what I do. I can see. The doctor said I would never see again. I can't run. The doctor said I'd never run again. I can ride my bike, and I'm thrilled for that. So imagine I'm riding my bike and I look out the San Jacinto Mountains in the wintertime and see the snow. Imagine in the springtime, the hummingbird is in front of me, or I'm seeing the coyote or the bobcat in front of me. I can see. I am grateful for that. I'm grateful that the idea that I live. I'm grateful for the idea that you're having me on your podcast. I base my life on gratitude. And for me, talk about magic wand working, it works for me. And that's how I trust. Every moment that I take, I'll be guided to circumstance that benefits me on a higher level. That's how I live.
Beautiful. So I will put all of your contact information, link to your book, etc., like that in the show notes. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you feel to bring up? Like, for the next 2 minutes or the next 22 minutes. I don't care how long that takes.
Okay. I'll just throw it on the table, and we can cut off with it if you want, and let people come back. And if you want to put me on, we'll talk about it. The animal kingdom, the environment. If you read my near-death experience, I go into detail about that. You go into the different, parts of every step we take is important. We blame ourselves. Oh, I should have gotten that relationship. Oh, I should have taken that job. Should have, could have, would have. It doesn't work. Take stock of who you are today. Change what you can. Believe in yourself, and go forward. And be grateful. That's it. But the animal kingdom is something we are now working on in this near-death documentary. We're presenting to collective consciousness, the collective intelligence, What happens to your pets when you cross over to the other side? And we can talk about that another time, but that's important to me. Too many people who've lost a dog or a cat or a horse or a rabbit, it's heartbreaking because it's a part of the family. And so the grieving process is just as important when you lose an animal as it is when you lose a father or mother or a child or a close friend. So don't think you're silly, and don't let people put that on you and make fun of you for that. You grieve if you have to grieve when you lose an animal. There's a reason. We'll talk about it. It's a very complicated subject with simple remedies of why.
And I'm happy to go into that or talk about the environment, like whatever you.
I think we'll leave it there. How about that? We'll leave it there.
Sure.
It's a teaser, but as I said, for those of you who want to, not even necessarily me, but just Google, do you see your pets on the other side? And just watch how many people who've had near-earth experiences talk about the animal kingdom. Just now, because of podcasts.
Wow.
It's a subject now that's finally coming forward.
Yeah.
The reincarnation, the past lives, just now coming forward. So I go back to 40 years of consciousness. I did a lecture in Santa Barbara 2 years ago, and this doctor came up to me, and this is what he said: "It's taken 40 years of consciousness to catch up with you, Peter Anthony." Well, it's just not me. It's all of us who've had near-earth experiences. People are paying attention to us, and let me tell you why. We've lost faith in our governments. We've lost faith in pharmaceutical companies. We've lost faith in our judicial systems. We've lost faith. And so what people are doing now, they're not going to mainstream. They're going into secondary markets. They're going to podcasts. They're going to subjects that, well, if this person had a conversation with God, or if this person came back, what did he or she see on the other side? People are looking for answers. And we are the ambassadors of the truth. And it's important for all of us who've had near-death experiences to talk about what we had on the other side, despite the bullseye we have on our back, despite how many people don't believe. I don't care anymore. This is my truth. This is what happened. I'm not trying to change your perspective on religion. I'm trying to tell you or to share with you what I saw on the other side. Take what applies and dismiss what doesn't.
Beautiful. I have absolutely enjoyed our time so much. It's I love being talking to people who are on my wavelength. And just the frequency, it's the topics to discuss and the conversation, it 100% resonates. Thank you for your time. I know you're busy. We tried to schedule this one several times, and it's, you're filming and you've got demands of other people on you. And I really appreciated it. Thank you, Peter.
Well, I hope this podcast resonates with at least one person. And as I said, if it does, then thank you for getting the message, because it means the world to me, and you will do something with it. So to that person that is listening, and that person who gets this, good for you.
Thumbs up. Awesome. Thank you, Peter.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, we're at the end of another thought-provoking episode. Remember to subscribe so you'll be alerted to new episodes. I want to say thank you to the men who are joining me on this journey of intuitive development. I truly hope our time together has expanded your reality and reinforced trust in your ever-reliable gut feeling. Embrace your intuition. It will not lead you astray. Until next time, stay tuned, stay curious, and trust your gut.